Hello, everybody. I am hosting the Brain Friendly channel, and today we have a new episode with a corporate dramatist. And you may be wondering, what is a corporate dramatist? So we have here David Mccavin from Sydney, who is going to explain what that means. Welcome, David. It's such a privilege to have you here today with us.
I'm so delighted to join you, Silvia, and hello everybody. And I hope that you are safe and dry. And if you're in northern New South Wales, our thoughts are with you. And in other parts of the world, we hope everybody's well this evening.
So, David Mccavin is the founder and the CEO of a company called Coup. And he is a former actor, but he still acts from time to time. And he was trained in NIDA. And then he has a very interesting story because he got into working with storytelling and doing all sorts of things. So tell us a little bit about your story, David.
My story.
Yes.
Look, I mean, the background that I have is kind of unique. Insofar as, yes, I did train as and work as a professional actor. You go to acting school for 3 years and you come out, and I think that is where my relationship with story really moved into that kind of professional appreciation of, the power of a strong story. But coming out as a young actor, it was all about entertainment. How do we fill a theatre? How do we get people to go along and see the movies? How do we get ratings on television with good stories? And I did work in that field for quite some time, but I wasn't content just telling other people's stories. And so I did get very interested in starting to write plays. And then the way to get a play on in Sydney in the late 80s, early 90s was to do it yourself. And so, the Griffin Theatre Company, I actually started a number of little theatre companies in order to be able to take a bit more control over the stories that we were telling. I wasn't that kind of actor who was tremendously excited about, doing a toothpaste commercial or a corporate video about a financial services company. I had this sort of fundamental, belief that stories were important, and that if we told them well, then we would bring an audience in. Putting a play on, I started to learn a bit about business, because show business is a business like any other, and you can have the most fantastic story in your mind, but if you don't get bums on seats, then it's fairly pointless. And also, the stuff that is happening on the stage is also supported by the marketing, the ticket sales, the selling of drinks in the foyer at halftime. There's a whole business side of it that I learned simply by just wanting to put a play on. As would come as no surprise to many people, working as an actor, it's chicken one week and then feathers the next. It's a very unpredictable industry. And there was a time when my wife was pregnant with our second child that I thought I need to maybe do something a little bit more serious. So I joined a media production company, in all things in the role of sales and business development. And then my appreciation of story kind of moved into the next phase. We were working with organizations, banks, mining companies, construction firms, and they were all trying to tell stories in video format. I realized that in the role of sales and business development, I had to be able to put everything that I'd learned around telling a good story into the B2B sales environment as well. And again, stories everywhere. What's your story? What do you want to achieve? This is our story. This is how we can help you. And look, for the last sort of 25 to 30 years, I've been working quite unconsciously on storytelling in a number of different formats, without actually realizing that central to all of it is this amazing discipline, this amazing technology that human beings have invented to create meaning, and to share that meaning with other people so that we can actually collaborate and work well together. So just to finish off the background, for the last 25 years, we established Coup in the 2001. We launched a business just before September 11, kind of sent a shockwave through the rest of the world. And leadership and communication, that was very much the core product. And for the last 25 years, I've been sort of training people around telling stories, leadership communication, executive coaching. Often the CEO -1, has to tell a story to convince the board that they are the person to lead the organization. And also looking at organizational development and culture, the shared story. So, yes, that's where the title, The Corporate Dramatist, came from. I'm no longer one of those snooty actors who can only ever work in the theatre, because we know that the stories that get told in business actually have a probably more fundamental impact on the quality of life for all of us than anything else.
Amazing journey you have had. And the title of today's session is Getting Your Story Straight.
Yes.
So how important is for business leaders, or for anyone, I would say, to learn how to get our story straight?
Look, I think it is the biggest untapped, or one of the biggest untapped opportunities for organizations and for individuals who lead organizations, is to really come to grips with what a story is, how to create one, how to share one. Our professional life has always been very reactive. I'll say that. People who know, myself and my partner Annie, they know that we've got the capacity to tell a story and to do a nice training workshop. And so we often get invited into the organization. The brief is often, we've got this senior leader, really smart person, but terrible communicator. And sometimes it's even the executive general manager or the CEO. They've got a wonderful vision for the organization, but to be honest, they're really boring. Can you help us with that? Yes, we can. Other briefs are around, we've got these people who are in these roles. They might be leading transformation and they're not confident speakers. Or we've got people on the leadership journey and they know that, being able to present at the town hall or, deliver messages to the market, those things are important. And the quality that everybody seems to be asking for is that we want people to be more confident. We want to be more confident storytellers. And here's my first disruptive thought. And I'd like to give you and the audience just a few disruptive thoughts to think about. Focusing on trying to be confident. Aiming to sound confident, to look confident. Everybody thinks that they want that. They don't. Because confidence, look, there are some people who shouldn't be confident about the stories that they're telling. Confidence is not what you are after. Instead of trying to appear confident, it is better to earn the right to be certain. Because when you are certain, the need to be confident, it kind of just evaporates. I think about some of the most powerful presentations, the most gripping stories that you have ever witnessed. And I imagine that they would have been delivered by people who have had no formal training in storytelling or communication. I'm talking about the people who deliver a eulogy at a funeral. The wife, the son, the daughter, the cousin, the friend, the sister. When they tell a story about this person that they know, that they love, they have earned the right to be certain about what they want to share with the audience. Yes, they might be nervous. Yes, they might be uncomfortable. They might be overwhelmed with emotion. But something happens in the telling of that story, which I, time and time again, just find so utterly moving. Now, those people aren't trying to sound confident. What they are is certain.
Yes.
I think it's kind of distasteful, some of the the value propositions that are presented to leaders, aspiring presenters. We will help you get a confident voice. I think I'd go so far to say that those kind of promises are fraudulent, because confidence is such a subjective, it's such an elusive and impermanent quality. You talk to a group of people, what do you value in communication? There's one word that comes up again and again and again, and that word is authenticity. We know we want to be authentic. We know we want to be believed. We know that if we're going to be trusted, we have to be true to ourselves and to the facts. Fantastic. So then why are we teaching people, the tips and tricks and the techniques that you can use in order to come across as being confident, when what we should be doing is tapping people's desire to be authentic? They say the truth will set you free. It'll probably piss a whole lot of people off in the process. But to have a professional approach to powerful communication that has impact and influence, that is based on true authenticity, to earn the right to be certain that the way you see things are the way things that they are, or to be absolutely certain that your vision of what's possible, it actually is possible. That your conviction that these are the things that must be done in order to achieve that, particularly for leaders, it's not right to stand in front of a group of people and not be absolutely certain that the transformation that you're advocating, or the change in behavior that you're asking for, it's not right to ask those things of people in an organization if you haven't earned the right to be certain that your perspective is valuable. The good thing is that when you earn the right, confidence just exudes itself. If you think about, like, Silvia, what are some of the things that you are absolutely certain about?
Many. However, I wanted to take your sorry, but I want to take this answer into two practical examples that I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
The funeral of Shane Warne yesterday, and his father, how he spoke, and his son, how he spoke, and they were certain about the qualities that this amazing man, had in terms of being a son or in terms of being a father. The other example that comes to mind, and I'm giving you these examples because I want you to comment on them. Zelensky, in him addressing the different countries and parliaments, and people standing up and clapping. Of course, he had experience in having a media production company, etc. So he probably is far ahead in comparison to other leaders. But what is it that these people did well in terms of getting the message across? If you can comment, because I think it's very useful for people to analyze a speech and then understand what is it that they are doing.
Yes. Look, I understand that only an hour ago Zelensky addressed the Australian Parliament, and I didn't see it. I'm going to watch the replay, but my partner was explaining to me just how powerful it was. He started, I believe, by talking about something that Ukraine and Australia have in common, and that was the shooting down of the plane. And what felt heartfelt, very authentic, was he offered his condolences to the family of the people who were lost. I think people have thrown around the phrase "we're all in this together." When we talk about COVID, we're all in this together. I think that we've discovered that that's not entirely true, and that different parts of the world and different levels of social structures have had a different experience of COVID. But when you can say with authenticity, there is something that we share. There is something that we have in common. The grief, the loss of that was created by that terrible incident. Look, in one respect, I have great admiration. I think it's a really smart thing to do in terms of developing a story. I'm not saying that that it was unconscionably manipulative, but it was effective. And so, I mean, that's just some of my reflection on Zelensky. I think a lot of people, when they talk about his background, he was a comedian, he was an actor. Actually, before that, he was a law student. I think he was a lawyer. I do believe that he studied.
Yes.
So he's obviously a man of tremendous intelligence, who's got the capacity to be able to construct an argument that is convincing, which is fundamentally what a story is. So, yeah, I mean, I think we've got, if we talk about the people who spoke at Shane Warne's funeral, and we've got Zelensky, they're worlds apart in some ways. Yes. In that the thing that is given the person delivering the eulogy the right to be certain is a life's experience. The thing that gives a world leader the platform to be persuasive, look, it certainly does include his actual experience of leading his country, his nation at this terrible time. So, he qualifies there. But it's clear to me that he thinks it through. I did see his persuasive story to the Russian people. And again, he told stories about himself, about his father. His father fought in the Soviet army. He speaks Russian. He was able to quite easily and authentically evoke elements of story that create a link, a connection with the audience. And that, you could say that it's instinctive genius, but you could also say that this can be a professional discipline. I think where I'm at, very much in my career, is about helping the organization or the people who lead the organization to get their story straight using insight, but also using some disciplines, because there are, we've got 3,000 years of theatrical history that we can draw on, and we know what works. We know what engages an audience. We know what transports an audience. We know how to manage the tension with an audience around making everybody feel great, and then destabilizing them a little bit, and then taking them on a journey of possibility, and then getting very, very grounded. There are some professional disciplines that, in my 25 years, I think are notably absent in the toolkit of a lot of leaders of organizations. Even the ones who are leading the internal communication function, if I could be so provocative.
Absolutely. And you have given us the business case of why it is important for a leader or a business leader or any of us to know how to share the information that is in our head through a story. So that's fantastic. Can you give us some practical elements, or perhaps a model that you use with 4 or 5 elements that people today can walk away understanding that there is a structure that they can follow in order to share a story?
Yeah. And look, I do have something that I can show you. Before I do, I just want to mention one other benefit of storytelling. When we think about storytelling or effective presentation or leadership communication, the benefit that gets created, my experience is that most people are only attuned to the downstream benefit. Okay? The downstream benefit. It's going to be a great presentation and everyone's going to feel fantastic. And they're going to walk out of here and they're going to behave in these ways. They're going to choose to support this culture. They're going to support our purpose, our vision, our values. They think about it in terms of the downstream benefit. What I'm going to share with you is about the value that gets created upstream. And it's a little bit along the lines of earning the right. We can mention a number of examples, but I won't, in order to avoid the political fault lines. We can think about leaders who are amassing and trying to hold on to power by telling lies. And I think that there's a very simple truth that power that is gained through lies does not endure. I mean, we only have to look at. It's just extraordinary if you think about corporate Australia and how many CEOs and chairmen of major gaming and financial services organisations have had to resign because of things going on in the belly of their organisation that shouldn't have been going on. Now, it's not for me to say whether they knew about it or that they don't, but it does say that there's a real problem around making profit out of something that you cannot share with the market and say this is how we're doing it. So there's either a conscious or an unconscious mistruth that's going on there. So look,
this is about ethics. It's not about the storytelling.
Well, you see, this is what I believe, that storytelling and ethics. You can tell a really short. You can tell a really short, effective story like Make America Great Again. It's a great story. Fantastic. Yeah. It's emotional, short, concise. I believe I know what that means and therefore I believe it. And then I believe the person who's telling the story. There's no doubt that the the previous American president was a master at hypnotizing and getting people engaged with a story. Do I think that the damage that the stories that he's been telling we're still counting the cost and will probably continue to do so for generations? Yes, I absolutely do. The destabilizing of the American institutions and indeed the European institutions, I think I'm not surprised that we're sort of on our, that we are at where we are at because of, President Trump's powerful capacity to amass power with lies. And whether it's ethics or not, we know when we're not telling the truth. You have to be a really good liar. You have to be a really practiced liar. And some people say that it helps to be a psychopath, to not care about anybody, to be able to lie really well. That's not the kind of professional discipline that we're recommending. We're recommending one where you actually get to investigate what is true and find the power to persuade and to influence from there. So this is one of the models we created. It's called the coup method. It's a bit of a nod to the Stanislavski method, which is an acting technique, which is based on truth and action. That's probably a bit remote for people who work in business. So what we have here are some very accessible concepts that help to understand, I think, what creates for a powerful presentation, powerful communication that has integrity. It's not Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And look, I invite people to take a screenshot or just see how this can work for you, because we find that a lot of people, when they're about to do a presentation, they focus on the wrong stuff. They start at the top. They worry about how they're going to, how am I going to sound confident? What am I going to say, my content, and how am I going to say it? And that's not a strong foundation upon which to build a persuasive argument. So our recommendation, if we want to develop a brain-friendly story, friendly to your brain and friendly to the brains that you're going to be communicating with, that you actually start at the base. I don't know whether it's clear, but the word at the bottom is self. Unto thine own self be true. That's a really kind of powerful truth, that when you are true to yourself, often we find a greater sense of presence, a greater sense of gravitas. And the things that we invite or we encourage people to consider around, say, a business issue is like, what's your relationship to this? What are your values in relation to this particular issue? If we're trying to close the gender pay gap, what's your experience of that? What are your values here? Is it because it's not fair? Is it because it's not commercial to not actually pay, women what they are worth, and therefore we lose them to the industry? What are the values? What are your true values that sit beneath your perspective on a given issue? What are your aspirations? What do you want to achieve? And also, what are your characteristics? It's quite funny. We sometimes are asked to help someone with a presentation, and the first question that we ask is, why you? Why are you speaking to the market? Why are you, delivering this to the town hall? And the answer is often, because I have to. Tony's away, and I have to. It's not a strong foundation for you to start to take people on a journey. And then so we just ask the question, so why are you? Why are you the first choice? How long have you been working here? What did you study? What's been your experience of the last few years? What do you know about this that nobody else does? What do you know that they don't? And just that moment of reflection, when someone answers the question, oh, I know why it's me, they change. Which is not to say that all of your investigation is about yourself. We move to the next level, which is about the relationship level. Who is your audience? And what do they value? What do they believe? Where are they right now? Are they very commercial people? Are they very, people? Are they somewhere in between? Who are we talking to here? A common error that I often hear about in organizations is that, got to present to a new client, or where's that presentation that we did to the other mob? They go start searching the C drive for an old PowerPoint presentation, and they wonder why they don't feel confident in delivering it. If you get absolutely clear on why are you speaking, what do you believe, what do you value, what do you want to achieve, and then you think about your audience. What do they believe? If they believe the same thing that you believe, then you don't need to present. But if you believe something and they believe something different, then that's what your communication is then going to be all about. What do I need to offer? What messages do I need to deliver in order to move people from where they are to where they're going to be? So then that's the next level up. You start to think about the message. Do I need to, let's imagine I'm dealing with a bunch of skeptics. Well, maybe the first message is, look, I really understand. I respect your reasoning. I respect the way that you're thinking about this. I wouldn't buy it myself based on what we already know. The message is, I get it. Then maybe the next message destabilizes them a little bit, but you may not have thought about this. And then the next message could be something along the lines of, this is why it's important. And the next message is, these are the things that need to be done. And so we're starting to think in active terms about our communication. You can almost think in terms of Newton's first law of motion. An object at rest remains at rest, and an object moving at a constant velocity continues moving at a constant velocity unless acted upon by a net external force. Okay, it's the same with people. They believe what they believe, they do what they do, unless acted upon by a net external force. That is the message. So you go through the process. What do I believe? What do I want to achieve? Where's my audience right now? Okay, what is the message that's going to move them? And then we move to the next level. What content will deliver that message? It could be the figures. Here's the percentage. And this is where we sit on the league tables, and that's not where we want to be. It could be a story. We had an exit interview with this particular graduate the other day, and she believed that the leaders in the business actually didn't care about her career, and that is why we are losing our top talent. We are not engaging our people in the way that we want. So content delivers the message that moves the audience from where they are to where you want them to be. And you might notice that right at the very, very top is we've got the considerations around delivery. There's a wonderful thing that happens when you have earned the right to speak by investigating the levels beneath, that often you don't have to worry about your delivery. All you need to do is to remind yourself to be simple, to be clear, to be direct, to tell the story, and then the impact that you have will be much stronger because you've earned the right to be there. So look, this is one of the models that we use. The coup method, and it's really about getting your thoughts straight. I mean, we know that there's an enormous amount of complexity. If you really drilled into the questions that you could ask yourself at these levels, there's an enormous amount of complexity. But this helps you kind of get it organized. It's not. You haven't written the script yet. There's another model that we use, which I don't know whether you have any appetite for that one. But this is about really developing a smart, audience-centered, brain-friendly communication strategy.
That's great. It's a very powerful method, and I have seen people practicing it in some of your workshops, and it works really well. Like today is, anyone who is listening, and they are receiving a mini master class by David Mccavin, and it's a very useful thing to have this type of structures for people who are not, natural storytellers. When I think of storytelling, I think about, my mother reading me a book when I was a child, or, members of a tribe around a fire, listening to the wisdom of the elders. And in a way, we have lost this appetite for storytelling because we are too much in a rush to do things. So the storytelling has been replaced by doing stuff, which sometimes leaves people wondering, what are they there for? And some people are confused and lost. And so I think storytelling has a place when, like you say, when it's authentic, when it's useful, when it's meaningful. Otherwise, if you don't have anything good to say, better not to say anything, isn't it? Right?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, I would say that the other you talk about we're doing all the time, and we don't have time to consider what the right stories are. I think that there's also another insidious element in corporate cultures, and it's corporate speak. There's an expectation that we have to use certain words, and if we use them in the right order, then it will appear like we know what we're talking about. I've seen people just absolutely tying themselves in knots because they've been told by the the head of strategy or the head of communications, that this is the stuff that's going to be going on. Now, when I coach, I use this. Look, on more than one occasion, I've sat with the aspirant CEO. Okay, and they know that there's all of this stuff at stake, and they have to deliver this message to the chairman of the board, and this message to the senior leadership team, and this message to the market, and there's so much pressure that they use the right words. And what I keep asking them is, but what do you see? What do you believe? How does that actually align with your values? Is this right? And quite on several occasions with different individuals, there's this moment where they stop fighting and they start to tell the truth. We say that we're moving towards simplicity, but we can't until this is done. And I go, oh, tell me some more about that. And then they start to actually, they start addressing the difficult stuff. Go through the valley of the shadow of death. They come out the other side with something that is actually new, that is authentic, that is fresh, that is real, and that has cut through. And so, your mother telling you the story has cut through because it's in an intimate relationship and it's just one-to-one, and that's beautiful. When we're talking about a candidate in a field of candidates, or a service provider in a competitive field of service providers, the need to be able to cut through in a way whereby you're not promising stuff that you can't deliver is paramount. And we find that it is in the deep, respectful interrogation of reality, your reality and the reality of your audience, that you find that thing, that brilliant idea that changes everything. And it is in a process like this. Often when I'm teaching people around the coup method, I think about your work, Silvia, and the absolute need to give the brain different experiences in order for each of the capacity of the brain to be able to, work to its potential, and then to find that integration. So, often we can obsess about, what am I going to say to this group? I've only got 5 minutes in front of the board. I've got to get all of this across, and they sit there at the with their PowerPoint open, and they're trying to make it work, and it just ain't happening. So we say, go for a walk. Sleep on it. Do the dishes, empty the dishwasher, take the dog for a walk, mow the lawn, go for a walk along the beach, and just think about you and them. And then out of that process of stepping back and respecting that a great story arises out of your appreciation of self and the people that you're talking to, then the messages, the content, and the delivery, they come.
One of the things that I was going to ask you is, what does storytelling do for the brain of whoever is listening? How is that different to providing numbers and facts and figures, which normally is the domain of the chief financial officer, and it's boring as hell?
Yeah.
Not that there is no a time to share some slides on the numbers, but if you keep it just on that, there's no engagement. So what does storytelling do to the brain?
Yeah, okay, all right. So look, I think in this regard, the important thing to remember is that we are human beings first, and we are CFOs second. We are human beings first, and we are corporate lawyers second. We are still working with a brain that evolved over millennia, and stories are the fundamental mechanism within the brain to be able to gather together complex information and make sense of reality, like what just happened. How did that happen? And then project into the future about what could happen. And at that very, very fundamental level, human beings were making progress, telling stories, even before we had numbers. I'm a great believer in the right numbers, the right spreadsheets, the right rationale, the legal precedent, all of that complexity. It's absolutely, it's incredibly powerful, right? So I'm not suggesting that the right approach to storytelling is around dumbing it down. However, if you are actually going to be working with the technology that receives the value of a story, then you need to understand that the way that the brain works. And anybody who's a student of your work, Silvia, would know that different brain functions have different languages. We've got the shared whiteboard, which is our consciousness, where some things meet. These things we are conscious of. But there are so many things that drive decision and behavior, and really that's what a good story should do. There are so many aspects of brain function and nervous system function that sit beneath the level of consciousness. People make decisions at a fundamental level. They move towards the things that make them feel safe. Now, for someone who is financially minded, a sparkling audit and some nice, neat, spreadsheet lines, and when the numbers add up, that makes them feel safe. And so that emotional response then moves into the prefrontal cortex, and they post-rationalize it, and they go, okay, so the thing that's convincing here is the numbers. No, the numbers aren't the things that convinced you. It's the way those numbers made you feel. The thing about modern leadership communication is that you have diverse audiences. Thank goodness for that. Lots of different ways that we can define diversity. But probably the one that I'll just focus on now is thinking style. Some people see the world in terms of numbers and logic, and some people see the world in terms of action. Some people see the world in terms of relationship and human beings. If you can tell a story that has a little bit of, that has a human character, that goes into action, that does something which is logical or numerically defensible, then you're actually appealing to all of those different thought processes. Very difficult to be integrative and accommodate diversity if you only use one modality. You can take the story of the three little pigs. Three pigs, there's your numbers. The decision that they make, what they chose to build their houses out of, and then the effect of that. Stories are the great uniters. And again, it's not a romantic notion. It's the human brain. And if you want to speak to the human brain, then you'll use what human beings have done with human brains for years to be persuasive, and that's tell really good stories.
That's fantastic. And what's coming to my mind is this story that is going around the world in the last 24 hours after the Oscars, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. Yes. So that has created a story, and the reason why I bring it up is because everybody's talking about it. So what's the power of that story from your perspective?
Look, I think it's the dissonance, it's the shock. Okay, so that's something. If I go to, if I was to place this into our structure, let's imagine that Will Smith wanted to shock everybody, and I don't know what the message is. I don't know what the message to us was. There definitely was a message to us, but there was definitely a message to Chris Rock. And the content was the slap. It was a shock. And so what can we learn from that? If you want to get people's attention, really shocking, dissonant content. Give your audience something that they are not expecting. And so, yeah, I know that there's a lot that could be said about that moment, but the things that are dissonant. Again, and this is why we have a deep distrust of corporate speak. When we say, the values, this is our purpose, our vision, and our values, people just kind of go to sleep when they try to inspire people with just the words. We need to play a strong action, and I'm certainly not recommending that anybody physically assault anybody in order to get the point across. I think about something that got people talking years ago. This is probably one of the very first, pieces of coaching that we were doing around telling an interesting story, and it was a product leader in a technology company.
Okay, I think we have lost David for a few seconds, and maybe we can use this time to think about what's the story that you may need to be telling the people around you to engage them more or to inspire them? How can we apply some of the elements that David was talking about? What's the content? What's the message? What's the delivery style? What type of audience are listening to you? And what's the relationship that you have with them? And I'm trying to summarize your coup method
Yeah.
while we wait for you to come back.
Well, those are the questions that we should be asking, not where's that PowerPoint that we delivered last time. Um, it can actually be quite a joyful experience to go through that process of going, okay, what do I really believe, and where are their thoughts now, and what would appeal to them, and what would excite them, what would interest them, what would scare them, what would move them into action. When we have a professional approach to developing communication and to telling stories, we discover a power which unfortunately can be used for great evil. We hope that enough people who are well intended develop the skills and the strengths around storytelling that we want. Just the storytelling, the example that I was going to give around shocking people was the product leader gets up in front of the group and says, and she has a bow and an arrow and an apple. All right, and she brings up one of the the popular sales guys on stage and puts the apple on the head, and then she goes back and she says, "Hang on a second, no, I want to have a talk to you about how we need to hit our targets. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to put this arrow through that apple." And everyone's going, "Oh my, what, and she had them in the palm of her hand for that entire thing, because she was absolutely certain that at the end of the presentation she was going to put the apple through the arrow through the apple. And yes, it was a little bit disappointing. She didn't actually fire the arrow. She walked over and stuck it through, and she said, "We've got to be smart, okay?" And so you can find interesting ways of shocking people out of complacency. Necessity is the mother of invention. This is where creative insight comes from. When you give yourself a challenge, like how do I actually shock people to get their attention? Don't hit them.
Definitely. One question that I have is, sometimes with the storytelling, people can fall into what we call first position, just talking about how they see the world, their needs, their desires, and instead of positioning themselves in what we normally call second position, which is
Yes.
understanding the well of others. So can you tell us how to do that switch from saying what you need to say in your story to actually doing the things you need to do in order to engage your audience? What techniques
Sure.
are that we can use?
Would it be okay if I just gave you another structure? Because
Definitely.
okay,
Go
because
ahead.
look, we do take a systematic approach to telling stories, and I'll say that some people think, oh, gee, that's a really good actor. It looks like they're not acting, so they think that there's no professionalism behind it. Actually, the better the actor, probably the harder that they've worked. And they've harder that they've worked with good methods and good systems that work for them. So, look, I described this one, the coup method, as a way of getting your thoughts straight. This doesn't tell your story. The other structure that I want to show with you now, and this is the companion piece. This is where you get your story straight, right? This is actually how you build a narrative. And let's imagine that I have a very strong feeling about a business transformation or the social impact that we want to have, right? It's really good to be aware of that. We suggest that when you're, actually, it's over here, isn't it? When you're telling a story, to get your audience on board, you start with context, but not your context, your audience's.
Mm-hmm.
You move into that. You were saying it's like the second position.
Yes.
Okay. One fundamental human need is to be validated. It is to be understood. And so, some people say start a story with telling a joke. That's not a bad piece of advice if the joke gives you an opportunity to demonstrate that you share the same values as your audience. Mm-hmm. So, look, this structure here, and I'll answer your question in the context of the structure, this is how you get your story straight. CARDS, it's an acronym. It's a useful acronym. It evokes again our philosophical position that you'll be more powerful when you put your cards on the table, when you are being authentic. And a great way to start the story is to recognize the context of your audience. If you're a senior leader and you're talking to the people on the tools, then you say, I appreciate it's been tough for you. You've had lots of different pressures. You've performed extremely well during COVID. You deserve to feel proud. It was really great to see Angus here today. It's so wonderful. All of the things that you can do to make your audience feel understood and seen and acknowledge that their reality is important. There's a really simple litmus test. Silvia, have you ever been in a position where someone has been giving you advice and you found yourself thinking, this person has no idea what my life is like?
Definitely.
Does that ever happen?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I think it's to most people, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, certainly that's what we see often in people's, pulse surveys or the engagement surveys, that management don't really get it. So this is where we start with our professionalism. We reflect back to people a context that delivers a message that, yes, I do know what it's like for you, to the degree to which you can. And this is where the upstream benefit comes. You don't say, I know what it's been like for you until you've actually had a conversation with people. The things that you do to prepare, to earn the right to be certain. So that's it. That's where you start. This is your reality. And then you can surprise them a little bit with another aspect of the context that they don't know about. So yes, first thing, tell them what they want you to know about them, and then give them something that changes their worldview. And that's context. And context could be what's happening geopolitically. It's what's happening in the market. It's what's happening in the business. It's what's happening in this team. This is our reality. And in this reality, there's an unmet need or there's an opportunity. It's not all bad. This is what your experience is like. This is the data that we've got. This is the insight that could transform our business. This is context. And there's a real sense of authenticity and reality there. And then you pivot to the next part of the story. If these are the needs, this is what it looks like when these needs are met. That's the aim. This is what we are aspiring to. This is what we should be aiming to achieve. I'm sorry about this. I thought I had all of this turned off. That we keep our best talent. That we position ourselves as a market leader, that we make our numbers. This is what we should be aiming for. And there's a tension between those two things. Reality, aspiration. And there should be tension. In every great story, there is tension. These are the things that we want to achieve. And you don't take it for granted then that all the audience understands why this is the important thing. It's a big mistake that I think very intelligent and very expert people make. Just because it's obvious to me that this is what we should be aiming for, it doesn't mean that it's obvious for everybody. And when we live in a VUCA world where people are constantly prioritizing what has their attention, what takes their time, to be explicit about the reason. This is why we need to achieve this. This is the reason, because it's fair, because it's equitable, because it's commercial, because it's sustainable. These are the reasons. And so this story that you're telling should have rational integrity. This is where we are, where we're going. This is why we need to go in this direction. Then you get practical. These are the things that need to be done. We'll do an analysis. We'll work out what the right questions are. We'll answer those questions. We'll do the communication campaign. We'll develop the people. These. When you get to the decisive action part of your story, this is where, having earned the right to be certain, it's kind of compelling. If you're not convinced that these decisive actions are going to achieve this aim out of this context, then you've got no right to be telling people that they should be doing these things. So earn the right. These are the things that need to be done. And then finally, the last piece is support. And again, we go back to the, thinking about the other. How can I help you? How can I help you? What support do you need to do the things that need to be done in order to achieve this aim? This is how I will support you. Letting the audience know that at the very, very start and at the very, very end, your audience are foremost in your mind. Now, that's a platitude until it becomes a professional technique. Mm-hmm. So A professional actor doesn't step on the stage without a rehearsal period when they have worked their method. And yet, leaders walk onto conference stages, or they try and communicate with people over online video, and they think that using the same sensibilities that made them a great accountant, lawyer, doctor, engineer are going to work in this instance. It's like me walking into the operating theatre and saying, "Oh, I saw a few episodes of Grey's Anatomy. Give me the scalpel." It's like I said, I've seen an interesting documentary, therefore I'm a documentary maker.
Why do you think that people disregard the art of communication or the art of leadership in such a way that they don't prepare themselves as if they were Olympians? It's quite amazing to me.
I think there's an expectation that we should just be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People again, in 25 years of presentation training and presentation development, I've heard this argument again and again. I don't like to prepare terribly much because I'll go stale. I want to be authentic, so I'm not going to do any preparation. It's avoidant. That's absolute tosh. The thing about great preparation, if you prepare in the right way, it will make you more authentic. You will have earned the right to tell that story. You will have earned the right to be persuading people to do something that they otherwise would not have done. I think part of this is caused by the fact is that we are surrounded by some people who are just great storytellers. There are some people who just have the instincts. They know exactly what to say in order to engage people. I would suggest that is true for them in some contexts, and in other contexts, they may not be so effective. Yeah. There is just this. Yeah, we don't want to be a try-hard around something that we're supposed to be innately good at, and that's a really self-defeating thought.
In the last few minutes that we have today, and of course we could be talking to you forever, I want to know the place of emotion in a storytelling piece. How important is to show emotion, and why?
Oh, look, the way that you use emotion is hugely important because you're actually speaking to the emotional part of the brain that is going to make the decision before we post-rationalize it. There are many behavioral studies that say the decisions are made in the emotional part of the brain, and then our executive function, we post-rationalize a reason in order to justify the way that we are feeling. So emotion, absolutely critical. That does not mean that your presentations need to be emotional. What that does mean is you need to read your audience and what is the kind of emotional dynamic that is going to work for them. If you are, if you're doing communication training with a bunch of actuaries, then don't speak too loudly. Make it logical, make it rational, make it helpful, make it useful. I think people confuse emotion. Here we go. I think people confuse emotion by thinking about the emotionality of the presentation is the presenter, when actually the most important emotion is the one that you are generating in the nervous system of your audience, in the brain, in the heart, in the guts of your audience. And I could say something very, very quietly, and that could deliver a devastating emotional impact. I could say it very quietly, and if you related to it, if I was reading you and I really wanted to disrupt or destabilize you, I wouldn't have to be emotional. It's you. And that's, again, just that principle. It's not the story in your mind. It's not the story in the PowerPoint presentation. It's the story that you build in your audience that is most important. If you don't hit the right emotional level, then there will be dissonance, and people will come up with a rational reason to reject your offer, to avoid your call to arms, to prioritize something else. So you want to generate excitement, then talk about possibility. If you want to destabilize, remind people of stuff that they don't know and why that is dangerous to them. If you want to delight people, then give them something sweet to think about, and it could be a joke, a story, a cartoon. Look, emotion, tremendously important. It does not mean be emotional. It means
Mm,
know what evokes emotion in your audience.
yeah. Should we be training ourselves in the use of metaphors, better adjectives, better emotional words, poetry? Because I think we have lost the art of, using this type of words and expressions that
Yeah.
can light up a message and can contribute to storytelling.
Oh, look, I agree. Okay, 100%. Again, you want cut through. Use a metaphor. Tell a story with a person. You'll notice that the advertising for charities no longer talks about the 20,000 people who have been displaced. They talk about the one person. So that's one piece of good content. Give the people in your story a name, give them a character, because brains relate to stories of other human beings. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, metaphors. Metaphors are how you take the complex and you make it really, really simple. Um, and metaphors and similes, to see and appreciate the power of different metaphors. There are some wonderful. There's a terrific TED talk delivered by James Geary, and he talks about the difference between the object metaphor, which is mechanical, and then the agent metaphor, which implies a human being, and that has different power on people. Yes, I do think to use language, to use, you know, uncorporate speak language, um, and to use it authentically. I do think that to continue reading, to hold yourself to a higher standard. Know what's the precise word. What's the precise word that will deliver this message? Um, and um, and yeah, look at other great presentations. Look at how they're structured, and then look at the metaphors, the stories, and the language that they use.
Yeah. And one that comes to mind is the one of Brene Brown about vulnerability, the way she shares her story as a researcher and what she discovered is amazingly powerful. That's why she has so many million views.
Yes.
Isn't that? Yeah.
Look, all.
So,
Oh, sorry.
no, no,
I was
please.
just going to say all the great leaders, all the human beings who have made the greatest impact on, the course of history have been tremendous tremendous
Yeah.
storytellers. Whether it was Confucius or the Buddha or Jesus Christ or Muhammad, whether it is the icons of the 20th century, the Mandelas or the Malala Mustafa, their capacity to tell stories, Grace Tame. They change the course of history because they tell a story. It goes into a human brain. It is relatable. It continues to do its magic long after the story has actually been uttered. So yes, you want to have power. You want to have influence. Develop a method and a discipline around telling great stories.
Yeah. So true, David. And we are about to end our session today. But before we leave, I really want you to tell us what is it that you do for organizations and how people can reach out to you, because I have worked with many people, many great communicators in my life, but you are one of the best. You are at the top of your game, and anyone who gets coached by David when it comes to presentations and communication walks away with a myriad of tools and an amazing experience, because you are a lot of fun to work with.
Sylvia, you're too kind. You are too kind.
I'm not too kind. That is true.
Look, to describe the work that we do, I mean, every engagement starts off with consulting. Like what's going on? What's the story? What is your story? And are you trying to drive transformation? Is it about you? Is it about your story? Do you want to convince people that you deserve a promotion or should be leading the organization? And then we'll find a way of helping you get your thoughts straight and get your story straight. When it comes to cultural transformation, we make films as well. We do corporate media production. We do these interview-driven documentaries where we can interview people in the organization and find out what the story is and piece it together in a way that everybody feels like they're part of something cohesive. I am interested in actually doing a public program, and it's called Earn the Right, and it is about having an extended period where you can work quite consciously and methodically with these two tools that we described, the coup method and the card structure, so that with all of your communication, all the important communication, you give it the attention it deserves, you do justice to your strategic intellect and your judgment, and you actually enjoy what it's like to step into a high risk, high return situation, absolutely certain that you've earned the right to be there. Reach out to me, with LinkedIn at the moment. And yeah, look, if you'd like to have a conversation, I'd be absolutely delighted. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much, David, for your time and your expertise. It's really, unbelievable to talk to someone who is so articulate and knows so much about this topic. So we'll see everybody in our next episode. And remember to visit us in aboutmybrain.com or visit David at coup.com. Is that right?
Coup.co.
Coup.co. Okay. CO. And we remember that we create better leaders if we have good brains, and communication is a key piece to delivering a message and influencing the people in your life or at work, wherever you are in life. So thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you, everybody.